Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be speaking about the English language, or the English peoples, and the Brittonic peoples that were there before them. Now, this sentence I've said here might sound normal to you, and it is, but it's also another language, English. Now, English is a hypothetical language that is English if it was never adulterated and colonized by Norman and Viking peoples. Now, this actually has to do a lot with what I'm speaking about today, as that is what happened to create English. So I'm a passionate person about this subject. I'm not a history major, but I really wish I was. That's why I'm going to be talking to you guys about it today. Now, we're going to be focusing on the Brittonic peoples, those who lived before, the Germanic peoples, those who came over, and why it has to do with you today. Now, you've probably heard about Great Britain, but what I'm speaking about to you today is not that. It's Breton, not Britain, with an O. And these were Celtic peoples. Now, you've probably heard of the Boston Celtics, but the Celtic peoples were a large people group, like in the same way we have like Romantic peoples and Germanic, Slavic, that whole family. There's Celtic peoples here. And they were very large, and we really don't know much about them. John Cock from the Welsh University compares them to Neanderthals. As we know Neanderthals were there, we know where they were, kind of what they were doing, but we don't know much about their culture or anything like that. It's all very vague. And that's how we view the Celts, as they were very split up, but we only know very small things about them. They didn't have a written history, and the conquerors didn't really keep a very good track of them. Now, those conquerors were the Germans for the most part. And these Germans, who were formerly mercenaries in Romano Britain, which Romano Britain was the colonized culture from the Italians who had the south of England about here, where this dotted line is. They had these Germans as mercenaries to kind of keep the states together. But when the Roman Empire fell, the money stopped coming, so these barbarians came and kind of conquered the land for themselves. And that is who the modern Anglo-Saxons are descended of. But there were more than just the Anglos and the Saxons, which the Anglos were about here and was in northern Germany, or northern England. The Saxons were in the south, the southern England. People from Jutland, the Jutes, were down here, and the Frisians went up there. Now, these peoples didn't come as a united front. There's already 4 major cultural tribes who each had their own language and religions and whatnot. But it's described by Alison Hudson of the British Library as a game of footy, a tournament-style game of footy, which is a very British way to put it. But there were 12 or so kingdoms, and every so often, one of the 2 of them would go to war, one would eat the other. So now there's 6 kingdoms, 3 kingdoms, etc. Until there was one left, the Kingdom of Wessex, which ate the whole thing and ended up making what modern England is today. Now, what does this have to do with you today? And there's a lot of lingering effects that were left by these peoples. And if you are an English speaker, you have been impacted by them. That was their language that they made. And your last names were likely made by that. My last name is Moore, which is an English last name from there. If your name is kind of like Engelbert, has a Bert at the end, that is an Anglo name. And if you have an Irish name, then you're descended from the Celtic peoples. Most people are in some way descended from King John. He was in several children's stories as kind of a bad king. But if you're an Anglo-Saxon or in some way affected by them, so if you're African American, you likely have some genetics of you from these peoples. But one of the primary things that we have been influenced by these guys is holidays. Now, according to the Longship, which is sort of a pagan news outlet thing, a lot of our holidays can trace back from Midsummer, which is pretty obviously a pagan holiday, but Yule, which has to do with Christmas. Easter was a fertility thing that was kind of integrated into the church by the Christians because it happened to fall on an important Christian date. And the most interesting one is April Fool's was a Anglo-Saxon holiday. All in all, these are a very interesting people group. From the Celts as an unknown sort of Wiccan force that controlled most of Europe, They didn't write any of their history, leaving a very mysterious canvas where you can kind of paint your own ideas onto it. The Germanic peoples who just kind of showed up on the historical record and impacted the entire way the modern world works. And holidays and names, language, culture, religion. But what I want you to take away from this, the next time you are celebrating a holiday, or you hear the Boston Celtics, or you hear even the word like WASP, White Anglo Saxon Protestant, remember the people that came and made that a thing. So I think that there needs to be more recognition of these unknown historical groups. We all know the Romans and the French and the Germans, but there's such a vague history that happened on this little island that impacted the entire globe. Thank you guys. Now I am wearing nice shoes here.